Black workers have historically been the foundation stone upon which the American industrial empire has been built and sustained. It began with slavery over 400 years ago when black people were captured on the west coast of Africa, shipped to the United States, shipped to, what was then the colonies, and used to produce surplus value. Under slavery, the amount of surplus value which was extracted from black people was enormous because of the fact that the only thing that they got back for it was, food, a minimal amount of shelter, and a minimum amount of, clothing, just enough to procreate, to produce another generation of slaves. That is, the capital which was used to build industry in Europe and America essentially came out of the cotton trade, out of the textile industry in the 17th and 18th centuries. And from a basis of that industry, railroads developed, steel developed, and all the various other elements that went into the development of a modern economy. The process of the extraction of surplus value, has continued in this country, and it's been especially hard, on black people. Just as it was in the beginning of the development of capitalism, not only in America, but throughout the world, black people provided the foundation stone. You'll find that throughout the history of America, the black people have been in that same position. You find that's true today. You don't find too many black people as white-collar workers. You don't find too many black people who are skilled tradesmen. You find other kinds of cats, who are sitting in the factories, who are actually converting raw materials into finished products through their own sweat and blood. I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's a transformation of sweat and blood, literally, into finished products. So when you think about this, in terms of black power, in terms of, the kind of power which black people have as a people inside of this country, you get all the arguments that, they only 10% and they will be wiped out. You can't wipe out the hand that's feeding. We're essential and key to continual operation and continual smooth functioning of a highly industrialized, highly complicated machine. And we can use that power, if we ever get ourselves organized well enough to destroy that machine or to take it over. There are certain groups, which could just stop work tomorrow, and it might cause some kind of minor disruption in terms of the overall running of the society. But there are certain other groups that if they stop working tomorrow, the whole system is going to cease to function. Bus drivers, mailmen, truck drivers, workers in steel, workers in auto, people who play a crucial role in the money flow and the flow of commodities and the flow of raw materials and the creation of finished products throughout the entire society. And by and large, black people are overwhelmingly employed in those kinds of jobs.
Mr. Foreman, low down the assembly line. I say, please, Mr. Foreman, low down the assembly line. I do mind working 12 hours a day, 7 long days a week. I lay down and try to rest, but Lord knows I'm too tired to sleep, Mr. Foreman. Lord, why don't you slow down your assembly line. No, I don't mind working. Lord knows I do mind dying.
This motherfucker's got to go to that goddamn job every single motherfucking day of his goddamn life. You know, and you go to that brother and say, what do you want? And he's going to say, motherfucker, I want to get off this goddamn motherfucking no good, dirty ass line.
And you see yourself in the shop. You know, you're a young guy, you're 24, 25 years old, and you see these older guys, 45 and 50, and they've gotten to the point where they have to work overtime just to have a free weekend every once in a while, or take their 2 weeks vacation. They have to save up for that. You know, and you start to wonder yourself, what the hell is this all about?
We worked in gasoline all day, and right down the line, there was a welder. One day we were working, and I wasn't over by the trucks, and a spark came from the welder, and there was a big explosion, and 2 guys really got burnt bad, and they took them away to the hospital. I mean, there's safety conditions don't even exist.
I've seen the chains on the line snap. This would propel the whole entire line at something like 40 and 50 miles an hour, you know. The last time it happened while I was there, a foreman was unfortunate enough to be caught in between the line, you know, and both his legs were cut off below the knee.
He lost his finger at the second knuckle, and he got $3,000. Like, they wanted him to come back to work 2 days later. They wanted him back on that press 2 days later, producing with the bandages and the whole bit.
It'd be many a days we'd get stock in that had been rained on and be rusty, you know, and they'd tell you run it.
They haven't done anything for you. They've only done reform things, but they haven't really changed the oppressive conditions that factories have. 10 hours, 7 days a week. Not even saying that a worker has any say-so whether or not he wants to work this overtime. It's compulsory overtime. And the union say, well, we're working on it, you know.
Management and the union have gotten to the point where they're almost the same. I mean, you hear the same rhetoric from both of them.
The superintendents or the management is exclusively white at Hamtramck. Hamtramck Assembly being 85% black. At Huber Avenue, it's almost 95% black.
I took 3 tests. Now, one of the math tests I took, I didn't do too well on. The fellow who was running the test said, well, I'll tell you what, you go home and study up on this a little bit and come back and see me in a week. I know goddamn well I was going to tell that to any colored boy.
You go out there, man, you get them little red helmets and them steel-toe motherfucking boots, man, and send you down in the motherfucking pits, the BOP, the basic oxygen plant, the open hearth furnace. I worked all over that motherfucker, man. Man, you come out of that motherfucker, man, with them flakes of steel that's in the air.
If it's ever going to stop like this, then it would have to be that the workers gain control of the plants. But if they don't maintain control of it, and it stays the way it is now, then the workers are going to steadily be losing life and limb, and the company doesn't lose anything.
They give you little bullshit amounts of money for working, wages and so forth, and then they steal all that shit back from you in terms of the way he got his other things set up. His whole credit gimmick society, man, consumer credit, buy shit on credit. He give you a little bit of shit to cool your ass out, and then steal all that shit back with shit called interest, the price of money. Motherfuckers in non-producing, non-existent, industries, motherfuckers who deal with paper. There's a cat who will stand up and say to you, he's in mining. And he sits in an office, man, on the 199th floor in some motherfucking building on Wall Street, and he's in mining. And he has papers, certificates, which are embroidered and shit, you know, stocks, bonds, debentures, obligations, you know. He's in mining. And he's sitting up in Wall Street, and his fingernails ain't been dirty in his motherfucking life. He went to Phillips Andover or Exeter. He went to Harvard. He went to Yale. He went to the Wharton School of Business, and he's in mining. And the motherfuckers who deal with intangibles are the motherfuckers who are rewarded in this society. The more abstract and intangible your shit is, hey, stocks, what is stocks? A stock certificate is evidence of ownership in something that's real. Ownership. He owns and controls and therefore receives, you know, the benefit from. That's what they call profit. He fucking with shit in Bolivia. He fucking with shit in Chile. He's Kennecott. He's Anaconda. He's United Fruit. He's in mining. He's in what? He ain't never in his life produced shit. Investment bankers, stock brokers, insurance men. It's motherfuckers who don't do nothing. We see that this whole society, man, exists and rests upon workers, and that this whole motherfucking society controlled by this ruling clique is parasitic, vulturistic, cannibalistic, and is sucking and destroying, man, the life of motherfucking workers, and we have to stop it because it's evil.
The League of Revolutionary Black Workers originally came out of consolidation of organizations such as DRUM, which is Dodge Revolutionary Union Movement, LRUM, which is the Eldon Avenue Gearing Axle, which is Eldon Revolutionary Union Movement, FRUM, which is the Ford Revolutionary Union Movement, comes out of the Fort Rouge Complex, and UPRUM, which is United Parcel Revolutionary Union Movement. Basically, Dodge Revolutionary Union Movement was the beginning of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. DRUM started from a grievance that the black workers had.
At the time, they were running 56 units or automobiles an hour on the line. There was no additional help. Workers were doing almost twice as much work one day as they were doing the day before. You know, the foreman on the line, he has obligation to see that his section runs smoothly, and a lot of times, you know, they'll notice defective automobiles going down the line. You know, all he wants to do is get it the hell out of his area. You know, get that car out on the street. You know, and at it by any means necessary. This is when we begin to realize we were in a twofold struggle. We soon started making demands that it would seem that the UAW should have been making, such as the demands on the production standards, the overtime. Workers were beginning to question just who did the UAW represent, the workers or the corporation. September of 1967, a brother had been fired for no reason at all. And the result of it was that most of the blacks on line supported the brother and walked out the plant and started what was a series of wildcat strikes. And hadn't been any strikes at Hamtramck in 14 years. So the next morning, we got up and came to the plant with our picket signs and bullhorns. What happened, the brothers just honored our picket line and the strike was really a success. But not having any kind of plan laid, we had like 3,000 black workers standing outside the plant and really didn't know what to do with them at the time. And right after the strike, one of the trustees at the plant died. So it was a special election set for the month of September. And when we came back in, we decided that we would run our own candidate independent of the existing UAW political machines inside the plant. DRUM's candidate became Ron March. Most of the old line blacks were telling us, well, you can't possibly win, you can't defeat them, and you know, you don't have the experience that these people have, and the brothers ain't gonna turn out for your candidate because you ain't got no platform, no program, all such, you know, crap as that. So we went on anyway. We said, well, we're gonna, you know, we've decided to do it and we're gonna do it. And the end result of the election was that Ron had pulled 563 votes. And the next leading candidate was a white worker named Joe Elliott. And he had 521 votes, so that was a runoff election. That, you know, it had to be a runoff election for the next week. But what happened immediately after the results of the election were given to the people, the Hamtramck Police Department started moving in a much more open way after that. about 50 of us go back to the Union Hall, which is right across the street from the police station. And we're sitting there, and here comes the mayor and the police commissioner, and the mayor has, the police commissioner had the gun in one hand and a can of mace in the other hand, and the mayor had his gun, and they were standing there telling us about, you know, like, you guys have been causing all kinds of trouble, you know. We running our thing about all we were trying to do is get a candidate elected to the office of trustee, and ran to them how they hadn't bothered to harass any of the other cars, or, you know, like give tickets to people who were supporting other candidates. We standing here arguing with the mayor and the police commissioner, and we look up, and in come about 50 rollers through the door, Mason and swinging axe handles, and, you know, just generally going for their thing. So, you know, it showed us the kind of repression that, you know, black workers would receive after trying to come up with some kind of militant revolutionary black workers organization, really addressing itself to the grievance of black workers. And it kind of tipped us off to maybe, you know, the kind of power we would have by trying to organize an independent black labor struggle. And, you know, this has led us to where we are today, more or less. Still trying to organize an independent black labor organization, and, you know, like, we see this as a vital part of the black revolution within America.
It should be understood that DRUM was not an organization that came in from the community in the beginning to organize workers inside of Hamtramck Assembly. I work at Hamtramck Assembly, and I was a part of organizing DRUM, but not as a necessity of, let's say, a new organization. What I'm trying to say is that there were a lot of organizations in the plant that organized because the workers were aware before, let's say, I was, of the conditions in the plant. But what we did do upon organizing DRUM was give these other organizations leadership and our knowledge of what the conditions are and what can be done to correct these conditions. We, I believe, organized to show management and the union that the workers would not tolerate these type of conditions. So we organized the workers, and we found in the workers areas where there were, we'll say, the hot areas, that the workers in these areas would be 99% black. So as a result, we organized the black workers. And looking into the fact of the white workers, we found that all white workers were working in areas where there were no troubles, such as the inspection area, such as stock areas. This is one reason, and just one reason, why DRUM is a black organization. The white workers have constantly tried to support us, wanted to support us. But we found that management knew how to deal directly with integrated groups. So we informed the whites that they should organize themselves. And once they organized, then we could work on a coalition basis. But as of this day, I know of no white organizations in the plant that have organized.
Freedom, justice, and equality! Freedom, justice, and equality! Let black and beautiful free! Let black and beautiful free! Ngawa, black power! Ngawa, black power! Ngawa, black power! Ngawa, black power! Black workers 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 power! UAW means you ain't white! UAW means
contract is with the UAW-CIO. This is Mr. Walter Reuther's big union. As far as the revolutionary union movement is concerned, we know that it exists. But as far as knowing any of the details, how strong they are, how many members, what have you, we haven't bothered with that. Certainly, we have a contract with the UAW-CIO, and these are the people we deal with.
Black workers power! 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 Black workers power!
We've had a lot of flack, I guess you could say, from management and union, not because we're organizing, but because of the fact that they don't want the conditions in the plant exposed. The management says write a grievance, and the union says they'll make phone calls, so you're literally caught in the middle. There's been evidence that management, as of this date, is working directly with the local policy-making body, which is considered the executive board, which is another violation of the contract because the stewards in the plants and plant committeemen in the plants are supposed to represent the workers.
I don't think there's any doubt that over a period of years, the management and unions have become just a bit closer together. I worked at Ford prior to the unions, and in the original days, it was a hectic thing. But over the past years now, seemingly there's a getting together of the minds. Certainly there are problems, disagreements, but on the other hand, I think it's safe to say that management and union are growing up together.
Another black worker in the plant had his finger caught in a machine, and he lost his finger, his small finger, index, plus part of another finger. This type of event, this also was crushed by management and union. There seems to be no place you can turn for any type of restitution as far as your grievances are concerned because of this coalition between union and management.
When you have this getting along, naturally it serves to eliminate some of the labor problems that we were faced with back in the early years of unionism. And with the elimination of those problems, it means for regular working. You don't have the wildcat stoppages, the strikes and what have you. I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that as the automotive industry goes, so goes the city of Detroit. So goes this country, more or less. Naturally, we lose money when we are not working. So it's the best. Getting along certainly eliminates the lost time that is not necessary as far as we are concerned.
Be head ready! 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 Be head ready!
First time in our memory, the UAW has had a special convention here, supposedly for yesterday and today, but it seems that they've called it off. Our purpose was to protest this convention, the raising of dues. They are raising our dues under the guise of raising strike benefits, and to raise the other issues that Luther never addresses themselves to, the issue of speed up, the issue of safety, and certainly the issue of racism. And we had hoped to be able to confront the racists here at the convention, but apparently they fled.
I think also our concern is primarily with working conditions in the plant rather than the economical gains that Reuther wants to try and push through on this upcoming convention. We're more concerned about control of the plant by the local level. We want clean and honest elections. The black workers in the plants have been discriminated against as far as upgrading, and we are here now to protest that and let it be known how we feel about the entire issue.
Furthermore, we had incidents last night at the plant where the police came on the plant property, harassing workers, throwing them handcuffs on them, lacing them right on plant property, and this is not supposed to happen, and merely because they're black workers. And we are asking the UAW, along with our locals, to help us with these conditions, and to no avail, though.
And so that's primarily one of the reasons we're down here also.
Finally got the news how I do to be you. We finally got the news how I do to be. All the black people. 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 Long live George. Long live George. Long live George. Long live the League. Long live the League. Long live the League. Totally, completely synthesized by black people. You understand that? Black people did this. Black people talking about things for your need, not for somebody's want for a silly ass profit. Drum, baby, drum, baby, drum, baby, drum, baby, drum, 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 baby. Drum, let's dance. Drum, let's dance. Drum, long live drum, long live drum. We finally got the news on our dues of being you. Be mad, be mad, be mad, be mad, be mad, be mad. If you ain't mad, how come you ain't mad? So put a halter on Walter. You can't do nothing if you ain't mad. Put a halter on Walter. You can't win with friends. Put a halter on Walter. Go blind. It's time to halt this man's Walter. Be black, be black, be black, be black, be black, be, 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 be.
In past elections, Drum strongly suspected that the Union machine had been cheating. In order not to repeat past experiences, Drum arranged to have a challenger for each of his candidates. With screams of election fraud from black workers because the election machines refused to record votes for Drum candidates, the Drum challengers found themselves fighting a toe-to-toe battle with local union officials just to ensure that there would be a halfway fair election. Well, when the local realized that it could not steal enough votes to win, it called in the International Union. A guy named Joe Morelli, the UAW regional director, stormed into the Union Hall with his entire 50-man regional staff. These men were armed, and they were also accompanied by the Hamtramck Police Department. Together, they forcibly evicted the workers from the Union Hall and occupied the local overnight. The voting machines hadn't even been sealed yet. The next day, union officials announced that Ron March had come in third with 946 votes. The local president didn't even have to face a runoff election. Of 35 Drum candidates, only 2 were elected as alternate delegates. A week before, at the Chrysler Eldon Avenue plant, the Elron brothers had been defeated in an election in which the ballot boxes were held overnight in the police precinct station. The election demonstrated clearly to the workers that the UAW bureaucracy was willing to risk outright scandal rather than to allow blacks to control their own union. It didn't matter whether Drum legally won or lost in the case of this election. What counted was the very process of struggle, where the enemy loses by arousing the anger and raising the consciousness of thousands of black workers. Of course, you know, black workers haven't been the only people who have been exploited in American society. In this country, you know, they've been, you know, like the foundation stone of it. The vast majority of people in this country, vast majority of white people in this country are workers, overwhelming majority. And they're exploited similarly to black people. You know, they may not work as hard, the exploitation may not be as intense, but they're still the same being exploited. And generally they know that they're being exploited.
You got that. Do it on this one, you got more wires. I'll play that. Do it better on this one.
I worked in all these factories around here for Chryslers, Dodge Main, Diesels, Fords, practically all the shops there are in Detroit. All I got out of it was a living. And that's about all any man could get out of working by the day is a living.
I got a job in Cadillac on the assembly line, and I was swinging this there rear end of a Cadillac under those springs, 42 an hour. And I quit smoking because he didn't have time to light one.
I was a steward at that time, and they'd have the line speeded up on one floor, and you'd go up there and you'd talk to the foreman, and he'd slow it down. You go down, turn your back, go downstairs, come back up in 10 minutes, he had to speed it up again. Well, what are you going to do? They just want to run that thing the way they want to run it themselves. But the ownership benefits by it. The ownership only.
And I said, you take that goddamn job and shove it. I walked out of there, I can't never work for General Motors anymore. They got that on my record again.
And I left Huntington, West Virginia in 1942 and came to Detroit. I came up to Detroit because there was no much work in the South in Huntington, West Virginia, so I come up here for better wages.
Talking about the South being poor, you talk about the North, go through the South. You see some of them people living up in the hills. Down South, you didn't make it. Worked 6 days a week, right, that man carrying hired, attending bricklayers and made $19.80 in 1940. And he made $50 up here washing dishes. Was a lot of money. Most money I ever seen in my life.
As far as I'm concerned, the poor man's been poor all of his life, and the rich man's had it. So you can't take it away from the rich man, but he got it off the poor man. That's the reason why they got all the richest they got. They work it for nothing. That's the reason why they got all the money. And to this day, we'll still be under their if something ain't done about it.
Everybody is almost in revolt in this country, and I think we're entitled to more money. We should get it just the same as everybody else is getting their share of the loot. Certain groups are, there's no question about that. Colored, for one, and ADC, and so forth and so on.
There's a lot of confusion amongst white people in this country, amongst white workers in this country about who the enemy is. The same contradictions of overproduction, the same contradictions of increasing production are prevalent within the white working class. But because of the immense resources of propaganda, publicity, you know, radio, television, journals, magazines, and so on and so forth, which can be drawn upon, white people tend to get a little bit confused about who the enemy is. If you take a look at, you know, white workers in Flint, for instance, in the automobile industry, who are pretty hard pressed because the Buick plant up there is whipping their ass. You know, and it's whipping their ass about twice as hard today as it was 5 years ago. But who do they think the enemy is? You know, the nigger on the street. You know, crime in the streets, you know, was a problem. Or black people, you know, moving into our neighborhood, causing housing prices to decline and threatening to rape our wives and daughters, you know. And as a result, you get a cat like George Wallace who comes along, and George Wallace is not the first of the populist fascists in this country. And George Wallace talks about how the big, fat cats of Wall Street are messing up the country. It's the little man that's suffering because of, you know, the big, rich financial bears of Wall Street in conjunction and in alliance with the niggers. And the white folks, the white workers tend to buy that shit up. They tend to eat it up. They tend to love it. That's not in Birmingham, Alabama that I'm talking about. That's in Flint, Michigan. As a result of that kind of thing, you know, millions and millions of white workers in this country just don't understand what's going down and end up becoming counter-revolutionary, even though the contradictions which they face every day would say that they should be the most staunch revolutionaries. Black people represent, the most forward and progressive and militant movement inside of the plant, which are calling not for, in reality, they ain't calling for the destruction, of, the white working class. The demands which are being presented, are demands which are calling for an uplifting of the working class as a whole. And the actual fact of the matter is that the movement of black workers is a class movement that's calling for a total change in the relationship between workers and owners altogether. And what it's saying is that certainly we don't want all the shitty and lowest paying jobs in the plant. Certainly we don't want to be, most exploited people in the plant. And we aren't calling for anybody to be exploited. We're calling for the elimination of exploitation in the plants. We're calling for the elimination of racism in the plants. We're calling for the elimination of any kind of conditions inside of the plant, which are bad, for the basic, health and enjoyment, of life. We are not calling for the replacement of the black proletariat, with white workers, who happen to be in a higher stage on the ladder. We are not calling for a situation in which white oppressors will be replaced by black oppressors. We are calling for the ending of oppression altogether. Basically the reason that they're racist is because of the fact that they're afraid, that the little bit of niche that they got in society is going to be lost. But ain't nobody been trying to demonstrate to them that rather than being against the black movement and being enemies of the black movement, that they should be in favor of the black movement and supporters of the black movement, because the things that the black movement is doing inside of industry are basically in their interests. The kinds of demands and the kinds of movements, which black people are making inside of the plants are not inimical to the interests of the average white worker.
My father works for Chrysler, and he's worked for the Big Three. And when I was younger, I didn't see him too much because he was working afternoons, and to support the family, he had to work 2 jobs. See, that's one of the things. It's compulsive overtime. If the company wants you to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you have to work it. And he has to do this. And so, I don't know. He's tired, and you can see the strain on him. Even if the work ain't that bad, it's the monotony of it that gets to you. I don't think that human beings made to do the same repetitive tasks 2,000 to 3,000 times a day, every day, for 40 years. And a lot of these guys drinking that, and, I don't think a lot of them care whether they live or die, really.
The program here at Macomb is designed to take a student with the average high school education, take this young man and bring him up to a technical level so that he is employable within his community. Those who wish to leave when they get done, and many of the students leave before they are done. These we call continuing education or terminal education students. These young people come in, they need a job. Maybe the job is to be a silver brazier at a factory. It pays approximately $3.50 an hour. They need this job to support themselves. They'll come in, they'll take the course in oxyacetylene welding, and we'll never see them again. This got them a job, it got them on the payrolls of society, shall we say, and they're happy.
The reason I'm attending this Macomb is because I wouldn't be accepted at any other place. And the reason for that is it would go back to grade school. The teachers, they think I was going to amount to too much, and you would take these tests and that, and they said, well, you didn't do too good, and you're a little dumb, And one teacher actually told me she thought I'd be a factory worker. And, well, that was okay with me. So in high school, I just took shop courses and shop math. And, as long as you just get the degree, that was an important thing. I would have dropped out, but my parents wanted me to stay, so I stayed in. When I'm not at Macomb, I work in the factories around Detroit, and going to school is a little better than working in the factory, so it's the worst of 2 evils. And plus, you get a deferment for it, and that's all right.
We at Macomb have a cooperative training program that we are always looking for job opportunities for students. And I was assured by some of the people from Ford Motor Company that if we have some young people who are interested in foundry and need a working opportunity in this area, that they will provide occupational training.
There's some guys in the welding department over here running down how great the welding job is, by saying we're storing all this money. The thing is, you don't make that much money, and you don't get that same security like the promises. I mean, you got sparks flying in your eyes, and, you got acetylene in your lungs, it's the drag. And, that's the only alternatives they have, like getting better factory jobs. I mean, The technology thing is the only real thing that they're going to get out of this school. And the real thing is, like, you know, the only alternative they have is by, you know, doing those technology kind of jobs. I mean, by technology, I don't mean like, you know, smashing atoms and that sort of jive. I mean, you know, like being a better welder and producing 1,000 pieces of production more than the old man could do. The thing about Macomb is that they have this policy about phasing out out-of-county students. What out-of-county students mean is that most of the out-of-county students that come here are black, and they have last pick at the classes. And the only classes that are basically open are technology classes. It's sort of like institutional racism. It's like most of the skilled trades, like white people are into it, and black people are sort of like let out, and they're doing, you know, some other stuff like, you know, foundry and sort of bogus kind of work. It's like a relevant thing that, like, white people should respect the black struggle in a factory, because the black struggling in a factory will benefit both people. The thing is, the League and drum organizing in factories, that they're working in coordination, hoping that a white struggle in the factories will come about. It's real important for white people to start organizing white people and respect the black people's struggle.
You know, you got Vietnam, you got rebellions, you know, taking place. You have, you know, more strikes than there have ever been before in this country, yet you got higher profits than they've ever had before. The fact of the matter is that the incessant pressures of production on the worker have reached a point of productivity which is so high, and this is literally the truth, that the automobile industry could afford to double wages without even, you know, worrying about very much loss of profits. In terms of actual real wages, you know, when you take into account of inflation, the level is just a little above, if it is a little bit above, mainly because of overtime, you know, what it was 20 years ago. And essentially what it is the thing that we call the political economy of poverty. And what it says is that if you keep people poor enough, not only are you starving them, but you're stopping them from having some power. But as wages increase, the power of the workers to be able to resist increases. That is, they're able to save a little bit of money. If they're able to save a little bit of money, they're able to develop a strike fund. Not only are they able to develop a strike fund, if they got a little bit extra money, they might be able to buy some guns. They might be able to organize themselves a little bit better, you know, be able to afford to pay some dues, you know, through which they can have, you know, paid staff, you know, which can do all the things which are necessary to the creation of a revolutionary organization.
The League's practice and our judgment reflects a number of things that are fairly critical. Okay, just in summary, you know, one, it reflects an awareness on the part of the League that the only kind of resolution of the problems facing black people and other oppressed people in this country is going to have to come through a level of revolutionary change being induced. The League's practice, we think, also reflects an awareness of the fact that continued adherence and continued reliance upon the operation of capitalistic principles and imperialist principles is, of course, anathema, you know, and the antithesis of anything that relates to decency and justice and freedom for mankind. So we are explicitly Marxist-Leninists. But we are also, of course, cognizant of the fact that there's peculiar oppression that affects black people. We call ourselves the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, and we have to deal with the racial component as it operates in terms of producing and maintaining oppression and exploitation in this society. And it's equally clear that blacks objectively represent the vanguard of the struggle. It's our position that workers represent the vanguard of this black vanguard by virtue of the strategic point in which they find themselves located in a critical aspect of the operation of the capitalist system. So it's our feeling that the necessity of developing organizations like the organizations that we're trying to work on developing is crucial, is critical. That it is critically important in terms of trying to do the kind of organizing that the League and the Drum and the LRUM and the other organizations have tried to do is that it's critical to relate to other components in the community. The student piece, the League has a student component, the Black Student Voice. The League is working now to build a citywide operation called the Black Student United Front because we understand the necessity of having their support. We also understand the manpower that can be made available. The League relates concretely to that whole familiar category of problems that are stated when one relates to the so-called ghetto man, the problems of housing, the problems of employment, the problems of police-community relations, of police brutality, if you don't want to be euphemistic, and all the rest.
Nine-year-old Danny Smith was waiting for a bus with his mother when he was struck in the chest by a stray bullet fired by a Highland Park police officer. The League and the black community are presently demanding that the cops involved be brought to justice. Danny's father had been laid off from Ford's. His mother had just taken a job as a nurse's aide. Like the majority of her black sisters, Mrs. Smith has to work, not for any kind of fulfillment, but because of sheer bread and butter need. Between the ages of 25 and 34, 57% of black women work, as compared to 41% of white women. We are, by and large, relegated to positions of low-paying, temporary jobs. Nearly half are service workers, chambermaids, janitresses, floor and wall washers. On the other hand, well over 50% of white women who work hold white-collar jobs. They are secretaries and clerks in the offices that black women clean after these people go home at night. Secret labor studies show that increasing numbers of black women will be entering factory production work. Employers may hire black women expecting that because of our desperate need for decent jobs, we will be less militant in pressing for our rights. But black women understand better than anyone else how much work goes into every pound of bacon, into every slice of bread. We, more than anyone else in the workforce, know what it is to be laid off. We, more than anyone else in the workforce, know what it means to be looking, always looking for work. We have the highest unemployment rate and the lowest wage scales. In spite of our need to work, we are the last hired, the first fired.
We've had to devise means of dealing concretely with the problem of what do you do when workers are fired for organizational activity and you're not in a position to feed them. You're not in a position to force the man to give them their jobs back. You're not in a position really to speak concretely to any of their needs. You're confronted with incredible tactical questions. You're confronted with questions of what do you do? Try to force the union to get their jobs back, and if the union succeeds, that of course strengthens the union and diminishes your influence in that plant. On the other hand, if you make no response to that, then you're in the position of having led black workers out there based upon your analysis, based upon your anti-racist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist line. Then you got him out there and the man cracks them and you don't do anything. We've had to deal throughout the year with all of those concrete problems. And basically, in spite of all of that, we still exist as an organization. We have gotten stronger as an organization. We've gotten a house, we've got equipment, we're trying to revitalize the organ. We've dealt with a whole host of very concrete problems within the light of, international even political ramifications that have come to the city of Detroit. Moreover, the League's practice appreciates the necessity of labor being divided on a certain level, and we're very much into persons having to work, persons having to develop skills that relate concretely to the maintenance of a revolutionary organization, in addition to simply making proclamations and clenching the fist and espousing the line that we all agree with, at least we say. For example, we took the South End and we ran entire issues that were related to the problems of organizing workers. We ran entire issues and got press runs and picked up the press runs and did not put that paper out on Wayne State University campus, but we took that paper to the plants. The fact that John Watson was called the editor of the South End did not belie the fact that John Watson was operating as a member of the central staff of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, and the South End represented a resource that was being employed by the League of Revolutionary Black Workers to assist it in organizing workers. But we've spent the entire year withstanding the kinds of blows that the man will mete out to you if you are serious about the business of organizing a revolutionary organization. The minute Chrysler is attacked in Hamtramck, Chrysler pushes a button and gets the Hamtramck pigs, the Hamtramck Police Department, and the whole little city governmental structure. Just as you could see Ford do if you began to deal at the Ford Rouge plant, you're dealing with the city of Dearborn. The fact that we closed down the Dodge main plant, the Hamtramck assembly plant, which is the main assembly plant for Chrysler operations in this entire country, they were closed down. We caught a response from that. Chrysler hooked up with a super law firm, got an injunction, came back out with that injunction and tried to, destroy our organizational efforts, tried to rip off some of our leaders. They tried to get General Baker. They had Chuck Wooten. He was named as a defendant. Most of the central staff of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers has been a defendant in one case or another sometime in the year of 1969. The League of Revolutionary Black Workers has been engaged in some concrete struggles here in this area. And the fact of the League having been involved in some concrete struggles here in this area has produced some concrete repressive responses from the system. And what's beautiful and what's important about the League is if we contend that organizationally we've been able to basically maintain ourselves as an organization and basically preserve our revolutionary integrity as an organization by relying upon essentially our own resources.
The League of Revolutionary Black Workers recognizes that our struggle is not an isolated one. We have common cause with other black workers in this racist land and with the exploited and oppressed of the entire world. Our ultimate intention is to organize black workers as a whole, as a class in the United States, and proceeding from that basic mass organization to extend the revolutionary black organization throughout the community. It is incumbent upon us to foster, join with, initiate, organize, and lead other black workers in our common struggle. By being in the forefront of this revolutionary struggle, we must act swiftly to help organize drum-type organizations wherever there are black workers, be they in Henry Ford's kitchen, the White House, White Tower restaurants, at Fort Rouge, the Mississippi Delta, the plains of Wyoming, the mines of Bolivia, the rubber plantations of Indochina, the oil fields of Biafra, or the Chrysler plants in South Africa.